Welcome to Inspirational Journeys, everyone. This week, I have the pleasure of speaking with an editor who was in my intro to children's book editing course through the Editorial Freelancers Association. Welcome to Penni Askew.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. So why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners and the viewers first?
Okay, so my name is Penni Askew. I live in North Texas, but I grew up in Colorado and spent a lot of time on my grandpa's ranch in the mountains of Idaho, which is how I got my business name, which is Word Summit Editing, taking your writing to its peak, because mountains are just part of me, right? I started editing romance. I had been reading romance forever and part of Romancelandia, and I was a host in Harlequin's old community, which they still have. They moved it to Facebook when I left, and so I had the connections, and I had read so much romance that I knew without realizing how much I knew how to edit. And I got an internship with a small romance publisher, and then I learned to copy edit and hung up my figurative shingle in 2017, and that's when I joined the Editorial Freelancers Association. And I expanded as I got more experience so that I will copy edit almost any genre fiction and a lot of narrative nonfiction. And I will do in-depth developmental editing, which is looking at the structure of the story for romance. So for romance, I'll do almost all stages of editing. And for the other types of fiction, I will do copy editing and line editing.
Oh, okay. So what inspired you to become an editor?
You know, it's interesting. When my kids were little, I met a lot of authors who wrote for Harlequin who lived near me, and we would get together for lunch or dinner about every 3 months, and they would talk about their editors, and I would think, I'd really like to do that. And I had no idea the different stages of editing. I just knew that it sounded like something I would really like. And another acquaintance who was an editorial director at the small publisher was looking for interns right about the time my kids were going into high school. And I thought, now is a really good time to do a career change or to explore this. And so I became their intern and did that for a couple of years. And then I was their assistant as I was building my own editing business. And it was just something that called to me.
Wow, that is amazing. I feel like God has called me to become an editor too, because and for those of you listening and watching, we are probably going to be talking a shop and sharing experiences. So just hanging out with us, you might learn a thing or two. But yeah, I've been writing and podcasting, and I was reading in Braille, reading a book to review it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can spot these problems. And it's like the more I wrote, the more I was able to edit. So I felt like, this is one of those the type of work that I can do. I'm more skilled at line edits, but I want to learn developmental edits too. So I read on your website that you worked with as an intern with a small publisher. How did you get into that?
Just luck of being on Twitter at the right moment when the call for interns went out. So, and I guess being on Twitter, following editors and publishers and authors. So it was total luck.
Okay, I wouldn't call it
Sorry.
luck, but okay.
Well, or providence.
Yeah.
But for listeners who would like to learn, I would say follow, but also reach out to some of the small publishers to see if they have internships. And there are more small publishers than you realize. And I'm not talking about self-publishing authors who set up a company where they're publishing themselves and maybe a friend or two. There are quite a few small publishers when you start looking at the landscape.
Right. I have a friend who actually started her publishing company this year.
Excellent. Yes.
Yeah. So And that's an awesome thing. I might look into that. But also, when you started your editing business, did you was that where you got your start, was through doing the internships, or?
Yes and no. So in the internship, we were learning to developmental edit, and I also wanted to learn to copy edit. And so I went to a writers conference because I was asking, how can I be a better developmental editor or editor all around? And the Editor Freelance Association, Editorial Freelance, the EFA was there.
Yeah, EFA, yeah, Editorial
Yes,
Freelancers Association.
yes. And I've been a member since I saw them. I saw their table. I talked to one of the women who is still one of our coordinators. We have an active chapter. We get together for coffee every month, those of us who have time on that Wednesday morning. Since the pandemic, we meet over Zoom, and we have quarterly chapter meetings where we go over things. We teach each other, or we get guest speakers in to teach us things about the business. Sometimes the business side, we've had accountants come in and give us advice. I mean, not specific advice, but here's the things you need to make sure. Here's some software that will make it easier. Craft advice. And we try to get workshops for everybody throughout the year, because we are not all fiction editors in our chapter. We have academic editors and business editors. It's easier to find workshops, I think, for the fiction editors, but it's amazing the niches of editing that you don't think about until you become one and join the community. Yeah.
I'm a guest. I've signed up as a guest. I can't do the membership right now, but did you take the editing and proofreading with Chicago Manual of Style course?
I did not. When I first joined, I took all of the copy editing classes, and I took I took 3 or 4 or 5 developmental editing classes. And I learned line editing from interning. That was one thing they did teach us, the line editing, just not the copy editing, the mechanics and consistency and grammar parts of copy editing. That I did have to take classes for, but I had the line editing through the internship.
Was this a paid internship, or was it just?
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
it was not. It was experience. And then they already had a full stable of editors. And so even though I passed their copy editing test easily, they were impressed. They just have, very rarely do I get paid work from them at this point, even though I'm in their list of available and has passed the copy editing test stable. Yeah, so
you just gave me something to look to do some to research for, because
yes,
that just sounds like a really interesting thing. So and did you, when you put your website together, did you add other resources, or did you create those external links yourself?
I created those myself. Wix is who hosts me, and they have a pretty easy point and drag and drop and point and shoot, and I chose them because they were having a sale. I think the other hosting sites are probably just as good, and overall you probably end up, hopefully you'll stay in business for years and years and years, and the cost is probably the same or similar across all the platforms.
Wow, I mean, the site's accessible. I can say that for those visually impaired listeners that want to look at it, it is accessible. Honestly, I use WordPress, and I've got to develop my editorial page. So do you have any tips for editors just getting started?
I would say take the classes that you think you need, and you may have so much that you think you need to learn that you don't know where to start. So if you're in the US or you want to edit US English, I would look at the EFA website, which is the-efa.org, and they've got the educational classes. You can join them and get a slight discount. To be honest, you probably won't take enough classes to pay for the membership. If you use the job board later, you'll get your membership back in spades. If you have a local chapter like I do, it is worth it. It's my most expensive professional organization that I belong to. I belong to 4. I belong to the EFA and ACES, the Society for Editing, and the Professional Editors Network, and I've actually dropped my National Association of Independent Writers and Editors. But of those 4 organizations, the EFA is the most expensive, but it's also because I have a chapter local to me, and they've got the great classes all the time, the most beneficial to me. Although Penn has some good workshops and ACES has some good classes and webinars. If you're just starting out, I assume that you've got a budget in time and money both. And so I would say look at the EFA. You don't have to join to take the classes, and so don't worry about that. And you might want to take some classes that are different variety, copy editing and developmental editing, and explore your niche. If you are okay belonging to Twitter, you might find the editing side of Twitter. If you do hashtag EdiBuddies, that's EDIBUDDIES, hashtag EdiBuddies, you'll find some other editors, and once you start finding 1 or 5, then the algorithm should show you more. You can
Oh,
look for me. I think I'm just at Penni Askew.
I think so.
I might be Penni Askew Reads, and that's PENNIAS, like Sam, KEW.
Okay. So, and I'm gonna put all that in the show notes. We'll cover those again. But what about do you have any tips for authors looking for an editor?
Yes. The first thing you need to be aware of is it's a professional relationship and it's a business, but you need to treat your writing as a business, and you want to find an editor you work well with. You want to find an editor that you are okay with them going into your story and suggesting changes. And you want to remember that you can say no to their changes, and you can ask them, why did you suggest this? And you want to be able to talk to them. So you should look around for editors, and you need to define what levels of editing you need and what your budget is. If you can afford all levels of budgeting, you would want a developmental edit and a line edit and a copy edit. And then once you've done the final copy edit and you pay someone to lay it out, if you're going to a print version, you'll want to pay a proofreader. That adds up. I tell people budget $5,000 for everything, which would include not just editing, but cover design and layout. And hopefully you won't hit that. But for your editor, if you're going to write more than 1 book, you hopefully will find the editor or editors that you work well with. And as I said, so it's a professional relationship, but it needs to be collegial so that you can communicate well with each other, and so that you can do project after project, because it gets easier for both of you the more projects you do together. If you're working well, you communicate even better, and you know each other's way of working. And you can ask for sample edits. In the early stages when you're doing developmental edit, which is looking at the big picture of how is the story working, where does it need improvement, it's really hard to do a sample edit. So you might need to just look at the editor's website. Once you get to line editing and copy editing, a lot of editors do free samples, just small little bits, maybe 500 or 1,000 words. Some editors charge. The ones I know who charge, if you hire them, they deduct the sample edit cost from the project cost, but not all of them do that. So, so you're looking for skill, and you're looking for clicking with them. And once you've gotten it down to, I've got these 2 or 3 or 4, and I think they all are probably pretty good. They've got good testimonials. They are being thanked in the books that they've worked on in the front, in the beginning, in the front pages. So you know that their skill is probably good. Then it goes with your gut instinct of, I think I really like this person. Some editors like me are okay and comfortable doing telephone calls or Zoom calls. Some are not. They don't want to take the time, or they have anxiety, or whatever their reasons are. So it also gets down to how you want to work. When I was new, I didn't. And now I'm like, it just helps us get a better feel for each other if we can do a phone call or a Zoom call to see if we think we're a good fit. We've done the sample edit. We think we match on paper. Let's do a call before you make the final decision.
I like that too. And I have an author friend that I'm actually working with her stuff. She's one of my first. She said she's going to be a client for a while, because she likes the way I edit her stuff. But I also like to be able to talk to people and let them know where I am in the process, or if there are some things that some specific areas of like story structure, point of view, things like that they need to work on. I'd rather, walk them through or talk them through that.
Yes.
Because that's, even though that would be considered coaching, I like that because it teach because it teaches him a lot about craft, and I like to provide resources.
Yes. Yes.
So you and I have so much in common.
Yes, and that's another thing that authors might ask is what kind of resources or how does your report look? I have a meeting set up this coming Sunday with a 16-year-old prospect and her mom. Because her mom, of course, is involved because the 16-year-old can't sign a contract. And I was looking at my resources, and I do have documents of here's grammar, here's a whole document on grammar and punctuation. And when I say whole, it's actually not that long. It's the basics, the common mistakes I see over and over, author after author, that if you can just learn these basics, you'll get it right 80% of the time, which makes my job easier. And I'm going to segue. And then I've got, here's a point of view sheet. Here are books to get or podcasts to listen to. But yeah, so I do.
I started adding links to different resources online. I've got a writing resource, a list that I'm working on adding links to. And that's what I started doing.
Yes, yes.
So,
but I like talking too, because I think sometimes, depending on the author, they may learn better, or it may be reinforced if they've got the sheet and you go over it verbally with them.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, and I'm going to ask you something on the business side, and I'm picking your brain here. But how did you determine your prices? Because that's the hard part.
In the beginning, I did not charge enough. Because I was going with what the woman who taught me and what the publisher were paying theirs. And so I started too low, but I tracked. So what authors need to know, some editors will charge by the hour, and how they communicate with you will be vital, because you'll need to know if you're going to hit your budget, if they're going to go over. Since I started in romance authors are used to paying a per word rate or a per project rate. And so even though I was charging, and I still do, I charge per project. At my website, I have the range per word.
Right.
That, this kind will be between, 1 and 3 cents per word. But what I started to do was track how long did it take me to do this project? And so what should I have been charging per word to make a good rate? Because in the beginning I was making maybe minimum wage. And part of that was I was slow because I was still trying to be, perfect and looking things up and overthinking things. But part of it is I wasn't charging enough. So I've taken my rates up to where it's a good living, it's a living wage underlying the project rate. And that's another reason most editors can't tell you until they see your manuscript how much it's going to cost, because we need to see, are we going to be doing a lot more work than this client that I've worked on? I had one colleague in one of my groups is working on his 63rd project with the client. I would bet he knows exactly how much to charge that client before he even sees the project. And I've got a couple clients, repeat clients like that, but not 63. 63 projects with one yet.
Wouldn't that be nice?
But I do want to say, I'm going to segue off into how you send your project to your editor. So for authors who don't know this, in the editing world, we say an editor has done a good job, and we're not talking developmental, we're talking when you get into the copy edits, if they have caught 80 to 95% of the mistakes in your book. Now, if you have a lot of things they have to fix, they're going to miss more, and I would think that they are going to have a lower catch rate if they're having to concentrate too much on, do you have all these misspellings? So before you send it to your editor, do run it through Word's grammar check and spell check. And I know that a lot of times it's an algorithm, or it's an AI, it's artificial intelligence. It doesn't know. And that's why you're hiring a human editor. A human editor will know that this is the way we're going to say it, even though grammatically it's not right and Word flagged it. Ignore that. But do run it through those checks, or if you have Grammarly, which editors tend to really not like, but it will still.
A lot of people like Pro Writing Aid better.
Pro Writing Aid and AutoCrit also. But remember that you're a human. And so if you know the rule and you know you're ignoring it, do ignore it. But give your editor the best manuscript you can give, because I know, since I work with independent authors and they've got a budget, very often we try to do a combined edit. And so I may point out phrasing that they need to fix that would be considered a line editing piece, even if I'm doing a copy edit. But if I'm so focused on fixing copy edit things, my brain can't do it all. And if your budget is limited, the cleaner the manuscript is when you send it, the better job I can do for you. And I want to. It bothers me when I can't do a better job for authors.
Wow. Thank you so much for all of those wonderful tips. And I do encourage you, Penny, to take the editing and proofreading with Chicago Manual of Style. It's a self-paced course that Kirk Perry teaches. The only thing I didn't like about that is I didn't have anybody to go to when I had questions. But since you do copy edits, you would probably understand some of the like typeface and stuff better than I did.
Oh, I didn't realize he got into that, because I was going to say I am pursuing the certificate in copy editing from the University of California, San Diego, and I'm halfway through that. But it's the next one will be medium copy edits, and the final one will be heavy copy edits. And those are it's 4 10-week courses, and I've done two of the 4. So I'm 20 weeks out of 40 done.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think they get it. They may, but so I'll finish that and then I will go back and revisit.
Yeah, because it's like he gives you 6 months to do it, but he talks not only about the commas, the punctuation. They talk about sensitivity. They go through numbering, symbols, or certain certain symbols. They talk about typeface. They do notes and bibliography. They do a lot of, and like social media.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, notes for social media and stuff like that. They do a lot of that stuff. He covers. I made a lesson sheet for it, but he covers a lot of that stuff.
Oh, excellent. Yes, if that had been available, I might have taken that. But once I've started the UCSD course, I want to finish it. But what I have found is it's always a good idea when you can make time to refresh your skills. And so a course like that, I can see me taking a year or 2 after I finish the UCSD certificate.
Oh yeah.
Because, you just forget, or you get in a rut, or you've been working on the same kinds of things and your brain needs to expand again and be reminded that, oh, all these other rules are out here.
Right. And if you subscribe to the Chicago Manual of Style and you keep the lesson sheet, you can go and look at those sections over and over again if you need to. Because I've had to look up some stuff.
Yes. I have lots of bookmarks in my online Chicago Manual of Style subscription.
I didn't know how to do bookmarks, but I have that sheet so I can go back and look at stuff.
Yes.
And then it points you to other things too, to other sections, which I absolutely love.
Me too. Yes, I do a lot of clicking.
Well, thank you so much for giving us some valuable editing tips. And I will go search for internships through publishers. But we challenge you today, for those of you listening and watching, to go out there and read to get inspired, write something inspiring, and share your creation with the world. For when you've touched one life, you've touched thousands. Before we go, I want to ask, where can people find you online if they want to reach out to you for editing, or if they're editors wanting to talk to you?
They can reach me through my website. Contact form is wordsummitediting.com. or they can just email me, Penni, Penni, at wordsummitediting.com. And then I am on Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, but I don't use it very often, and Facebook. And my Facebook, you don't have to friend me on Facebook. Most of my Facebook posts are writing related and public. So if you just want to follow me on Facebook, you'll see, you know, there's a writers conference or here's a workshop.
Okay. So thank you for joining us on Inspirational Journeys. And remember, your story matters. Have a blessed day, everyone.